Good morning. We are live. Hello, Texas.
Morning.
We are Red News. Thank you for joining us, breaking through the disruption webinar series. You'd think is my first webinar. I can't even get the words out. I want to thank our sponsors, because we at Red News are in the news and event business, and we can't do live events. So we've had to pivot and learn to do webinars, which has been great, but we couldn't do it without sponsors. So I want to thank the Borderplex Alliance, NRG Park, Vaquero Trading, SIOR, and Transwestern for helping us launch this program and get it off the ground. I think the webinars are going to turn into something great for us and for everybody around the nation. I think we've all learned to pivot and learned a little bit of technology along the way. In case you were unaware, Red News has joined a larger group, RE Journals. We have offices in Chicago, Illinois, Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am in the Minneapolis office, don't you know? But these are our 6 publications in 17 states. We were planning to do 104 live events this year. We're still planning to do those. In fact, I believe in Houston, we'll have our first event in June 24th. It'll be simulcast between live and video. If you're having connection issues, I'm showing 5 bars on our server, so it's probably on your end if you have a connection issue. So if you see something freeze up on your screen or audio freezes, hit that reconnect button at the top of your screen. That's the best way to kind of just a quick reset, and you'll be right back in, and hopefully that's over. If that doesn't work, make sure you're using Google Chrome as a browser. That's the best browser we've found. You can also view this on your cell phone, on your iPad, or any other device. Just click on the link we sent you on that device, and you'll be able to use it. On your right, if you're on your computer, below you, if you're on a cell phone, is a chat room. Open that up, say hello to the people in the group, put in your name, company would be great, and location that you're at, where you're at, and you can network. Polls, I'll put up a poll in a little bit. You'll see that cover up your chat function. When the poll comes on, hit the answer and then close it down, and you can get back to chatting, and then I'll post the results when we're done. We are recording this as we do all of our webinars. So the people that get to see it live, awesome. If you don't, or if you want to send this to a friend or a colleague after we're done, rejournals.com/videos. It'll take you to our YouTube channel, and we have everything we've done so far this season is up there for free of charge, and you can view any one of our webinars on Texas, Midwest, any other, our other states. So here we are today. Open Texas responsibly, getting people back to work. I have to say before we jump in, this original plan for this webinar was to have a debate about whether or not we should be opening up and how fast. And I think that what we ended up with was a bunch of people that are really smart on this issue that are going to pivot to just talking about responsibly. But to the extent you want to talk about whether or not we should be doing this, or how fast we should be doing it, I think those are still great topics. So gentlemen, I'm going to let you have a little bit of freedom to explore this topic in whatever way you see fit. Here's how I'd like to do introductions. I'm going to start with Ryan. We'll go around the Hollywood squares, have everybody introduce yourselves, but also while you're introducing yourself, your company, how long you've been there, all that kind of stuff. But I want to hear what you're doing today. We're in week 9 of COVID shutdowns. What is a day in your life like today? What kinds of things you're working on? I think that'll give people a little bit of color as to what you do in your role as well. So Ryan, take us away. Well, we lost audio on Ryan. Turn your audio on and off once. So why don't you, boy, did we lose. John, can you say something?
Yeah, hello.
There we go.
Good
Okay,
morning.
John, take us away. I'll have Ryan log out and log back in if you can still hear me.
Sure.
So John, you're up.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is John Barela. I'm the CEO of the Borderplex Alliance based in El Paso. We have a unique organization in that we are the economic development and policy advocacy group for the region. The Borderplex region we define as Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, El Paso County, and my home county of Doña Ana County, New Mexico. We have 3 different political jurisdictions, but one integrated economy, one integrated culture. Our region is comprised of about 2.7 million individuals. And we are, if you put us in the middle of the United States, we'd rank as the 19th largest metropolitan statistical area in the U.S. So we have a significant population center here on the border. We literally are one integrated community geographically, economically, culturally, and historically. Our organization is seeing a great deal of interest in our region, mainly reshoring, onshoring opportunities, primarily from Asia, no surprise. So if there's a silver lining to this COVID-19 crisis, I think you're going to see people wanting to reshore opportunities, job opportunities to this country, especially in Texas. I am seeing record numbers of expansion and relocation opportunities, at least with our organization. I've been with this group for 3 years as its CEO. I'm the former cabinet secretary for economic development in New Mexico. So it's a very interesting time. Clearly, things are slow here. One last thing I will do in the introduction is to illustrate the interconnectivity, the symbiotic relationship we have with our great friends in Ciudad Juarez. Between 15 and 30% of the retail trade that takes place in El Paso and the U.S. side is from Mexican national shoppers. And that's significant. So this shutdown in the short term has impacted our economy greatly, no surprise, like everyone else, but has been multiplied by the fact that, again, with the border shut down for non-essential travel, it has really impacted our community in a very dramatic and very profound way.
We're just still doing intros, but I got to ask, a day in your life when you're having these conversations about onshoring or all these opportunities that are coming towards El Paso, are you on the phone all day, or have you been able to get out and meet some people, or is this all webinars and web calls, Zoom?
Mainly phone calls and video conferences. That's how we've been conducting business. I have not been on a plane in several weeks. Our typical business is, of course, is meeting one-on-one, and I miss that one-on-one meeting. We haven't had any site visits except for 2 or 3. We've actually had people come here. But I'm happy to point out we're about ready to close one deal, a reshoring opportunity from Asia in El Paso, based on a supply chain issue, of course, and based on what's happening with respect to the U.S.-China trade difficulties that we're currently experiencing. We go into that, of course.
Yeah.
We've been very, very busy. I'm happy to say there is.
That's great.
This cloud.
I look forward to learning more. Okay, Ryan, are you your audio working now?
Let's see.
There we go.
All right, good.
Technology.
Yeah, in the age of Zoom, that's the only thing you got to check these days is make sure everything's working all right. But well, good morning. My name is Ryan Walsh. I'm the executive director of NRG Park, which is the stadium, the convention center, and the arena, and of course the Astrodome. Been here about 5 years, and you know it's been fascinating. This, if you would have asked me 6 months ago, what's the craziest thing you ever thought you'd get into, I would have said maybe an Astroworld festival with Travis Scott or a Super Bowl or something like that, but certainly not a coronavirus pandemic. So it's been challenging for us, as you might imagine, because there's really 2 faces to it for us. There's, of course, the staff side. How do we keep the staff safe and healthy and working, but also the fans and guests that come to the events. This has been a huge impact to us on both counts. Obviously, we haven't had any business in the last 3 months since March 11th when the rodeo was shut down. That was a very, very big hit for all of us, for all of our partners and the tenants, of course, the rodeo and the Texans. So as we go forward, we're just looking at how do we twofold make it safe for the staff and guests, and for the staff to return. How do we include the social distancing in an industry that's mass gathering? That's a lot of people in one place. But also, how do we keep the fans and guests not only safe, but confident to return to a facility that's designed for these types of things in the age of COVID-19? So we've been busy, as you've probably seen on the news. The Harris County Public Health hosted a non-congregate medical shelter that fortunately was never used. So we were busy making sure that all of the odds and ends were met with that. And then going forward, it's the venue reintegration, we're calling it. How do we plan for the next step? How do we plan for the new normal? And also get back to business.
Ryan, I gotta wonder, just take us back for a second to when the rodeo shut down, and now state fairs are being shut down, all these events that aren't going to happen for a year that are huge numbers of revenue. Are some of these things going to be gone for good? Are they going to come back? I got to imagine it's crushing, right, for some of these partners?
It is. It's tough. I know that's an understatement, but it's tough for everybody, because it's not just the rodeo or the Texans, but it's all of the contractors and vendors that go into part of that. The Aramark, the CSC, the off-duty police officers, the parking attendants, you name it. There's so much more involved than just a rodeo or a Texans game. So it has been tough, and I think we will get back to a quote normal in some variety at some point. I mean, I think this is just a way of life for so many people, whether it's sports or entertainment or conventions. You're talking about having not been on a plane in several months. That's obviously a concern. Is the offshore technology conference that we host every year canceled for the first time? The rodeo canceling, and then how do we move forward? So I think things will return to normal. I think it's a question of what does that new normal look like? I think the community really does want to get back out and support their sports team and their entertainment venues and their rodeos and things like that. But they also want to do it in a way that's safe, and making sure that they're confident enough in our policies and procedures to return to a venue like that.
Yeah, look forward to discussing that. I'm going to go here to Kevin. It's your show. Take it away.
Yeah, good. Yeah, Ryan, make it fast, man. Get those sports teams back on the field. We'll take a little risk on that.
Amen.
I'm Kevin Roberts. I'm the president of the Southwest Region for Transwestern. We're one of the largest private real estate companies in America. We also have affiliates with BNP Paribas Real Estate and Debencore, which take us into Middle East, Northern Africa, and Canada. We also have two sister companies here in the U.S. that are, one is an investment management firm, Transwestern Investment Group, and the other is a development company, Transwestern Development Company. So we're active in every kind of commercial real estate. So we're seeing the full spectrum right now. And the last 9 weeks has really, from a workflow standpoint, we've been hard at it. We are on the service side. We support real estate that houses essential industries. So our asset services people and most of our team really has been on the field since day one. They've been working in shifts and heading out to the buildings and really being on the front lines. And so we also have another perspective, people like me who only the government could make us feel bad about ourselves by saying that we're non-essential employees, have to stay away from the office. So all non-essential people like me are starting to come back in the office now. We're coming in at per the governor's order, a very limited 25% census, and we have precautions in the office and one-way hallways and things like that. But I tell you, we see a lot of pain out there, and one of the things that is interesting, I think, in all of these back to work, Open Texas, the Lieutenant Governor's Task Force, the Greater Houston Partnership Task Force. I've been involved with the Lieutenant Governor and the Greater Houston Partnership, but I think that the greatest testament that we might be on the right track of having a reasonably good plan is that everybody hates all of the plans, and nothing's happening fast enough, or it's happening too fast. So, I think we'll hash through that as we go through today.
Yeah, it's interesting. So at Transwestern, are you getting a lot of national support? It would seem to me right now would be good to be with a big group. Is that helpful?
Absolutely. Obviously, I'm sitting in Houston, Texas, and we have our two black swans that are following us around in terms of COVID and the hiccup in the energy business. But very much helps to two things. One is to have the national footprint, and the other is to have the fully diversified platform where you can do investment management. You're in all types of real estate. It's much better now to be in industrial and multifamily than it is in office and retail. So we benefit from that diversity.
Nice. All right. Last but not least, Alvaro, if I'm saying that right, I'm from Minnesota, so if your name's not Swenson or Nelson, I can't pronounce it. So
Don't worry.
you're up.
Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Alvaro Bustillos. I'm originally from Chihuahua, but I live in El Paso. And I'm the CEO of Vaquero Trading. Vaquero Trading is one of the main sources of cattle into the U.S. We buy cattle through 11 crossing ports throughout the border between U.S. and Mexico. And what we've been named an essential company, so our business kind of picked up because everybody was running in a panic. Everybody was talking about shutting down the border. So a lot of these main producers in Mexico that export to the U.S., especially from the northern part of Mexico, their natural market is going into the U.S. So what happened is the numbers increased like 20%. And we've been very occupied in the last couple of weeks receiving cattle. Obviously, we've been maintaining our a lot of these new norms that.
Whoop, we got a freeze. Well, we're going to have to get back to that. It's just starting to get interesting. I can't wait to hear how I never thought about animals and the virus and how working with them has got to be completely different. What we're doing. Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Okay. I'm
Yep.
sorry. I don't know where I left off.
We'll come back around. You were talking about the challenges of moving cattle in today's environment, but tell us what you do on a daily basis. What's your job like?
What we run, we go into our office, and what happens is mainly we're everybody's at work, all of our group, but the people that are crossing the cattle at the ports, they do need to attend and work on a daily basis at site.
Right.
Our office is running from home operations, so basically we're at home working from there, running operations. As well, wanted to mention that I'm the chairman of Desarrollo Económico in Ciudad Juárez, so we're the sister association with John Barela on El Paso, and we work alongside various initiatives and projects to improve the quality of life of the people here in the region and the border.
I look forward to learning a lot more. I had never thought about any of the cattle or pork industries in relation to border crossing and all of the new regulations you all must have. Well, let's just start and dig in, though. John, I'm going to go to you first. What are some of the things that are going to keep the economy from taking off here, and how are you dealing with those challenges?
Well, I think there are certain universal challenges that every community in the United States and maybe throughout the world faces, and that is this fear of the virus. And until we see a vaccine or treatment of the virus, we're going to see a recovery that may or may not be fast. God willing, we'll see a quick solution to the vaccine issue and the treatment issue. If so, then I think we're going to see all of our economies bound back very, very quickly. If not, there'll be a fear factor that will certainly keep the recovery slow and in a slower mode. I think what we're seeing in our region is a bit different, however. We have, again, a very integrated economy. And what people don't realize is that our region is the fourth largest manufacturing hub in North America. By any measure, we are a massive manufacturing center. And people don't realize that about our region. One of our key short-term challenges is making sure that the definition of essential and non-essential is synchronized in the United States and in Mexico. For example, in the automotive supply industry, we are opening certainly plants in the United States, and that's a good thing. Demand is starting to increase slightly in automotive sales. We're seeing that in the data. But if Mexico is not open because of the supply chain that we are seeing, there'll be a delay in the production of automobiles in the short term and in the longer term. So we're moving toward that synchronization. good, bad, or indifferent, and I know there's a lot of folks who view free trade through a different prism, but let me state emphatically that Mexico is an economic and strategic ally of the United States, and we need to treat Mexico like that. Let me explain. We are going to be moving, in my humble opinion, and I'm an optimist on this, by the way, in the longer term and in the midterm. We are going to be moving to what I've been calling in my speeches and presentations a globalization, or a hemispheric or continental globalization. That is, that the North American countries of Canada, US, and Mexico will become even more integrated, not just because of USMCA, but because of the unpredictability of manufacturing in China, and then certainly what's going on now with the Sino-US relationship. And it's getting very complex, as we know. China is saying, and the US is saying, we're going to be entering into potentially a new Cold War, and there's probably some truth to that. But nevertheless, this hemispheric or continental globalization is a great opportunity for our country and communities in our country to take advantage of that reshoring. And in my humble opinion, there's no better place than the Borderplex area in which to do that. And the last thing I'll say on this is that we're seeing, as I've said in my introductory comments, a record level of interest in terms of vetted projects that are looking at our region. And I think Mexico and the US are incredibly well positioned to take advantage of those reshoring, expansion, and relocation opportunities.
I like how you mentioned at the beginning, you were talking about fear and the rebound. And I want to explore that a little bit more. So when you're talking with your business partners, whether it's a fully vetted manufacturer coming to onshoring, or just the people that are already there and already working that need to get back to normal to get the economy where it needs to be. Assuming that there's a percentage of the population that's going to be afraid no matter what we do, what percentage are we at that are comfortable, and what are some of the steps that you think we can take to get there? And what I'm getting at is, like us as Red News, we have a live event on June 24th. People are going to be nervous to come, but they show up and they see other people and they remember how good it is to be together. And I think people will kind of just start to relax a little bit and go, okay, I didn't die. I went out of my house. Woo, and nothing bad happened. Is it just a matter of time, or are there things that we should be doing to make sure those people feel comfortable?
Well, I think we're on the cusp of people just saying, you know what, it's time to get out, it's time to shop, it's time to get out and go to entertainment venues. As we know, in the shorter term, there will be a different paradigm for how we do those things. We're seeing it now. And it's not all a bad thing. I think you're going to see new seating configurations in jet planes from here into the future on jetliners. You're going to see entertainment venues, as was mentioned before, conduct business in a different way. Certainly the shopping experience may be different as we move along. But I am, again, going to take an optimistic tone on this. I believe that we're seeing people now wanting to get out, wanting to socialize, wanting to have that human interaction, those one-on-one meetings, face-to-face. And I think it's part of human nature. It's human nature to interact, to socialize, and to want to go out and be amongst our peers. And so I expect this to happen very quickly. I, for one, there'll still be a fear factor, but to answer your percentage, I'd say the majority of people now are wanting to get out and experience these things that we've been talking about. So I think there'll be a rebound in retail. I think, and we're seeing that now in data that came out today that I've seen. In virtually every sector, we're seeing some traction upward. The big question now is how quickly can we recover and recover strongly? And there's a difference of opinion on that. But I truly believe we're going to recover quicker than I think we all could have imagined. That's my humble opinion.
Oh, I hope so. Please tell me that's true. Can I ask you just another real quick follow-up on face masks? So you just mentioned we love to get out. We need to interact. It's part of being a human. And I look at pictures of, and it's been this way for a while, pictures of Asia, Japan, China, where people are wearing face masks, presumably because of smog or other issues from a time past. But it seems to be normal there to wear a face mask. I don't feel like, do you feel like that's something we need to all be doing right now to get that feeling better?
Well, I think so. I don't have no issues with some of these mandates that have been placed by certain certain jurisdictions. Certainly, I've participated in a number of task forces as well here in Texas and in other locations. And if people feel more comfortable doing that and operating into those mandates, I think we all benefit. One last thing here, though, these are things that we should have been doing anyway. In a normal year, 40 to 60,000 Americans perish, sadly, just out of the normal flu. And that's a lot of folks. And so we need to be cautious anyway with our hygiene and other things that we just simply haven't been in the past. So this may be a wake-up call for all of us in terms of health and safety moving forward, COVID-19 or no COVID-19. This is something we need to be doing constantly anyway, for ourselves, for our families, for our friends and others.
Yeah, I love it. All right, I really want to get to Ryan here. So what the question is, like, I coach college lacrosse and it's killing me. I just miss any kind of athletic performance. If somebody would go outside and play beanbag toss or darts, I mean, I literally would do anything to see some kind of competition. What does our timeline look like to start seeing stuff happening?
I don't think anybody's really put a timeline on it yet. I think it's all going to depend on how the recovery efforts go, how the I guess infection projections go after certainly open things up over Memorial Day weekend. One of the interesting things about all of this for any industry sector, any economic sector, is that this is a first for everybody in modern history. In this economy and this type of society, this is a first for us. Nobody knows really how to do it. So I think a lot of the I guess controversy that surrounds all of the reopening plans and whether it's the right thing to do or not is that nobody really knows what's next. So all we can do is plan against the worst case scenario. And that's what we're doing. I know that the NFL has been planning significantly as far as what are the steps that we take. Is it no fans? Is it some fans? Is it all TV, or is it no games at all? I don't think anybody foresees a situation where there's no games. I think what's going to be interesting is how the calculations are made as to whether or not it's no fans or some fans or all fans. The interesting thing that, we've got a task force here in Houston that works with all of the other venues and events here in town. That's Minute Maid Park and the Astros. That's Toyota Center at the Rockets, BBVA with the Dynamo and the Dash. We're all working together on a task force. We're all working together to try and find a way through this. The thing that we found is if you have so strict social distancing requirements, which is what's recommended now by the White House and the CDC, most of the venues can only get to 17 or 18% capacity. So you think about 17 or 18% of a 72,000 seat stadium. I mean, it's difficult to really envision that, but that's where we are right now. So we're working through the different scenarios. I really do think we'll get to a point where we're at maybe not full capacity, but at some capacity that makes sense not only for the economic models of each of the entities that are doing this, whether it's the teams or the facilities themselves, but also makes sense for the safety and health of the fans and guests that are coming into the facilities. So we're working on it. We're trying to get through it. It's just, how do we create a path forward through a challenging time that nobody has really navigated before? And that's the fascinating part to me.
17% sounds like an event. Well, I'm not going to make fun of any teams. There's probably some teams out there like, hey, we went up in attendance. No, I'm kidding. But how's that experience? Is it, are you painting lines on the floor and walk this way and don't walk that way? And is that what people are talking about? Wear a mask. You're sitting, how many seats between people? Is it all this stuff, right?
It's a combination of sort of the imaginative efforts of our operations folks and a scientific measure as far as, taking the bowl seating and working out, okay, you've got a family of 4 in one row, and then you need 6 foot of separation around that family. So where do you place the next set of people in the row above that? It's everything from how do you walk into a facility? I'm sure a lot of the folks in Houston have been to the rodeo and the Texans games, where you've got a line of folks coming through the magnetometers, going through the security checkpoints, and they're all bunched up. And then you get into the stadium, you walk up the ramp, you go to the concession stand, you get a beer, and you go sit down in your seat with 72,000 other people. So how do we do that? From getting into the property, from parking, to how do you go through a revised screening process? And that's screening not just for weapons and the physical safety, but also the health and safety. Do we have temperature checks? Is there enough technology out there today that can check somebody's temperature on a large number? If you got 30 or 40 people coming through at one time, in fact, going forward, are temperature checks going to be the recommended way to do it? I mean, the guidelines change so frequently and so often. As we're planning, it's changing. So we're working with all of our tenants and partners here at NRG Park, the Texans, the Rodeo, Airmark, CSC, ASM Global, as well as some consultants that are doing this on a national basis and work with a lot of the other facilities. So we're trying to get the like-minded folks with the resources and the protocols going so that we can do that, so we can reopen. So hopefully we're not at 17% capacity. So hopefully it makes economic and physical sense and health sense for somebody to come back into NRG Stadium or any other stadium or convention center or arena around the country.
Hey, Todd, can I ask you a question?
You
Brian,
sure can.
Don't mean to hijack your call here, but
Perfect.
webinar. All right, so Ryan, are y'all thinking about creating the game day experience in offsite locations, whether it's the parking lot, whether it's the convention center there at NRG or that big hall or somewhere else? Is that all part of the mix? Just not sitting in a bar, but sitting in a created experience that the Texans are so great at and that NRG is so great at. Is that in the mix, or are you just solely concerned about packing as many people as you can into NRG?
I'll tell you, nothing's off the table, honestly.
Yeah.
We're thinking about all kinds of scenarios. One of the things that I know that's been talked about a lot around the country are sort of these, quote, drive-in concert type things where you come in and you're in the concert, you sit in your car, and the concert is live. It's there live, and video screens are around so you can see it all. But that's one of the options, is how do you do that type of thing? Maybe there is some component where you have a certain number of people in the stadium. You have a certain number of people in the parking lot watching the game on the big screen. You have another certain number of people maybe in a viewing party type thing in NRG Center. Nothing's off the table. It's not about packing them in and packing them deep. It's really about how do we keep the fan experience and the guest experience as maximized as possible while also maximizing the health and safety in this new age.
We could talk all day about sports. I think all of us could, literally. But I gotta keep moving. Kevin, talk about some of the challenges and how you're overcoming them right now, and how we can get to the next phase from your perspective.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that we all have is this service sector of the economy, getting those people that are 50,000, 40,000 and under. That is the backbone of everything we do. It's the hospitality, it's the service economy, it's everything. Getting those people back in action, right? I heard a stat that 40% of the people that make 40,000 and under are either unemployed or are seeking unemployment, which is just a complete disaster. That means the longer we go there, fewer and fewer businesses are going to reopen. So, I think that to me is something that has impact in our business, because we need people. We need people that are manning our, restaurants and hotels and things like that, which means people need to be socialized through this process. You asked a question about masks. I'm not sure that masks are going to save the world, but number one, it's a good way to keep you from infecting somebody. Number two, it's probably the right thing to do from a social perspective now, and I think it probably allows people to get more comfortable. But I think to me, in all the groups we've been involved in, and our own thinking and looking at our workforce, things like that, to me, the number one thing that we have to make sure happens is schools need to open in the fall. That will release so many of those service workers who don't have daycare options and or family care options, things like that. So it seems like a lot of the focus is to make sure. The only thing worse than what's happening right now would be if it happened again and the whole thing got shut down again. So everyone's focusing on schools, schools, schools.
I've been doing surveys of our audience, and that's the question of last week was, what are the odds of a resurgence in the fall of having to shut things down again? I think that's the nightmare scenario. Are you planning for that right now? Do you think that that's a real possibility?
We're not planning for it. I think there's a greater likelihood. One of the things that we are seeing is the larger the company and the more robust sort of the governance internally in a company, the less likely they are to come back to an office scenario sooner. And I'm not sure, I know for a fact that the number one reason for that is the health and safety of their team members. I do think there's a piece of that is there's an incremental cost associated with bringing people back to the office. So there a lot of companies are benefiting from that. There's also a liability issue of telling people to come back to the workplace before they're really ready to do it. But are we planning for a resurgence? No, we're hoping that all of this pain we're going through right now and the incremental reopening of the economy will stop that. It's not terribly difficult to know how to stop the spread of this. You stay away from people and you wash your hands and you do things like that. So I think to me the number one thing is schools have to open so we can get people back in the workforce to get this thing going again. If we don't, the larger corporations coming back to fill up office spaces and larger spaces like that will definitely have a lingering impact on retail, certainly in the hardest hit markets like Houston. It'll have, if we don't have all the people in there, I think the lifestyle mixed use centers will still do fine, but those types of service companies that are housed in, large commercial structures are going to have trouble. They're going to have trouble if we don't get going pretty quick.
Yeah, I think that's rough. What would you say, just because you're a real estate guy and we have real estate people watching this, what are the top 2 asset classes if you had money to invest in or were going to invest, and what are the bottom 2 that you'd stay away from?
Well, right now it's a little bit of there's an opportunistic answer to that question. I don't know that anybody is really wanting to go trade for core real estate because no one really knows where the pricing is on that. The price discovery hasn't really settled out yet. So a lot of people, a lot of our clients are looking at opportunistic spectrum, not to be vultures or anything, but just that there are opportunities to help people out of tough situations here with rescue capital, things like that. So to answer your question, I'll answer it 2 ways. What would you want to own? You'd want to own industrial and multifamily, probably. What would you not want to own? Office and retail. What would you want to buy? I'd say you'd be looking at office right now, and probably keep some powder dry for the stuff that was trading at really low cap rates that was sort of priced to perfection, because I'm not sure what the visibility looks like going forward in the capital markets, but we are seeing that come back, and there are opportunities, and there's a lot of people looking. But retail. The other interesting thing I'll tell you is we would have lost a lot of money on this one particular bet if you would have said what percentage of office tenants, industrial tenants, retail tenants, multifamily tenants are going to be current in their rent in April and May. Across the board in Houston, which arguably is the hardest hit, we're seeing 90% of the office rents that are due and payable paid by the 15th of the month. It was the same in April and May, and we'll see what's happening in June there. But we would have lost that bet. That 10% between 90 and 100, there's probably some defaults in there, but that's some deferment discussion going on. That rent will be recovered at some point in the future. So that was that is sort of an encouraging bit of data that we're seeing.
Now, is that because of the federal stimulus, the PPP, the checks, all those things? Or is it Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we got to talk to Alvaro about for sure next. But or do you could it go away, or do you think that's just because the economic engine's going to get chugging again?
Well, the longer it goes, and obviously, Austin is different than Houston. Austin, I think they're looking at this as a very kind of not a real long, painful situation. Houston with the energy sector will be a little different. I do think there's some PPP impact in there, but I've talked to more people who have foregone going after a PPP loan because of the uncertainty. And there was a lot of rumors flying around. And what are the hurdles? How do I need to document it? Do I really qualify? And what happens if I mess it up and I have to pay it back? Then I'm in a significantly worse position. But anyway, I think we've been through this before. This is the fifth one I've been through, and they're all different. And the funny thing is, in hindsight, you can all see it coming. You can see it coming every time. We pumped too much oil, and we pumped more than the world demanded, and then the demand crashed, and you can just see it.
So I was hoping you'd give me an answer that I've been getting from some people around the nation on opportunity. And so I want to ask your opinion on land, industrial land, other types of land buys. Is now maybe a time to pick up some good assets there?
Typically land never moves as much as you'd like it to, but industrial is still a favored asset class. And I think, rents are for the most part holding. Occupancies are holding. There's certainly, every time you look up, we've built several buildings that now have 100% Amazon in there. So, sometimes you're good, sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're halfway lucky and good. But land positions for the right kind of product are always good to have. The problem that most developers have is they can't access and bank land. And maybe there's an opportunity to be able to get control of some of those great land sites at not top of market pricing.
Well, you heard it from Kevin. All right. This is the one that Alvaro, I haven't given this enough thought. I'm a webinar host and a CFO and a little bit of a real estate developer. I had to look up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What's more important, food or housing? And it dawned on me that we have been celebrating the front of the line, the nurses, the doctors, all these people that have been, helping us try to save people's lives through this virus. I haven't heard enough talk about people that are behind the scenes making sure that we have food to eat and that we can live our lives, period. So I got to hand it to people like you for out there conquering these problems. What does it take in this environment to sort of feed the world and do your job? Oh, we lost audio. So Alvaro, hit your microphone button. The blue one looks like a microphone. Okay. There you go. We're good. Okay.
Oh, well, as you know, food on our industry, we've been having some of our challenges as well. We have some distortion on the meat packing plants. The meat packing plants went down to operating a couple of weeks without being able to slaughter any cattle. And they've been coming up with 30-40% capacity and ramping up in the next couple of weeks. Usually what happens is we process about 600,000 head a week, and it went down almost to under 400,000. So we've been kind of picking up lately to try to source into some of these supermarkets, retail places. As you know, what happened is that the restaurant service industry got distorted, but at the end, some of those retail markets ramped up their inventories just to be able to sell some of our meat. But at the end, a lot of the quality and the premiums in the price discovery comes from the supermarkets, where from the food service sector, especially on the restaurants, high-end restaurants, steakhouses, that give some of these premiums back to the producers. That's what mainly have been some of our challenges. I know we have some legal issues that have been stepping up to the plate, basically from senators in the north part of the country, where they're trying to uh, zoom on these packing plants for the doubling of prices of meat, and the industry and the producers is on the brink of bankruptcy. There's obviously there's a big distortion into what these margins of the packing plants are, and the producers getting for their cattle. So it's been quite a ride in the last couple of weeks. Also, last week we had some comments from the president where he was thinking about shutting down cattle imports from some of the countries. Obviously, that kind of breaks into the USMCA contracts that recently passed by. So mainly those are kind of the points that I wanted to put into context of some of the challenges in the industry, and kind of leave it there.
So what is the where are we at in the cycle of things getting better? If you had the plants closing and cattle not being slaughtered and not enough food getting into the system, are we near the end of this, or is this going to continue to be an issue for weeks or months to come?
I think it'll be an issue for the next couple of weeks. I think we're gonna pick up production on the next couple of weeks. I think what is happening is there's a before and after COVID industry break, because at the end we had very few packing plants that have been the main players. I think we're gonna have to increase capacity into what the industry needs. So we need to open a couple more packing plants, basically to try to avoid some of these pandemics and some of these risks from the outside that affect our industry. And at the end, we're becoming a very big player in the food service into the world as well. I think at the end, we're gonna some of these premiums from our producers are coming to the export market to some of these Asian countries that we export, and into Mexico. We source a lot of their meat that gets into those markets.
When you talk about expanding the number of packing plants, is that you, or are you helping find people to create new plants and jobs?
No, basically those are the big kind of the Cargill, Tyson, JBS plants.
Oh, we got to freeze up. We'll get back to that. All right, gentlemen, unbelievably, we should have scheduled this for 2 hours. We have 10 minutes left. I'm going to start with Kevin. We're going to have to do something on final thoughts, or
those are the
oh, there we go. Temporary. We'll get back to you, Alvaro. I love the answers so far, but I'm going to go to Kevin. Do final thoughts and anything that we didn't talk about that you had hoped we'd talk about.
Well, I think, boy, the lack of good information about this whole COVID-19, how it's transmitted, the agendas behind everything. I think one of the things that has buoyed me through this entire process is the people that are involved in trying to find the solutions have the absolute best interest of everybody in the country at heart when they're doing it. You got the politicians over here, I don't want to get political, but you got the politicians over here. Both of them are nobody's favorite, but the people that are in the middle of it really trying to solve for X in this pandemic are the people that I really admire. And the task forces that we've been involved in, it's been hundreds of people that are given their own time, and these are robust debates and argument and really hashing out issues, with the number one factor being the health and safety of everybody. But the one thing that I do think, and I mentioned it, but I do think they have to do some work on this employer liability situation of people coming back to work. I think that's something that really needs some additional attention.
Yeah, as a former attorney, I can tell you liabilities, I don't know. It's the fact that you tell them they have to come to work. That's what I think makes it really challenging. You need them to work, right? We need people to be in the office. We need people to work. So we've got to find a way that it doesn't end up in crushing lawsuits. We were talking before the call, though, boy, we're going to have rolling lawsuits for the next 10 years from all this stuff.
No doubt. And that's why you're seeing some of the largest corporations holding off. Our company, we are allowing people to elect to come back to work. We're not making people come back to work. It's just, if you feel good about it, there may be a million reasons why you won't. But whenever you're ready, we're here.
I think that's a good approach. All right, let's go to Ryan. Is there anything you didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about? And do you have any other final thoughts?
No, I think we covered some great stuff today, and I think it's all going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds the next few months. Whether you're talking about lawsuits, where the liability protections that big companies are going to need, and how we get through those to keep people safe. What's next? I think that's the interesting thing to me, anyway, is to really challenge ourselves to plan for what's next, even though we have no idea. I mean, nobody planned for this 6 months ago. So we have no idea. I'm fascinated to see how it happens. I'm interested in these types of conversations that are happening so that we can work through those challenges with guys a lot smarter than me, folks in the room that have at least had these types of planning scenarios before, and see where we come out on the end. I think at the end, it's a new normal, but what that new normal looks like is something we're all going to have to figure out.
I sure hope that new normal looks a lot like old normal as much as possible, especially when it comes to sports. It'd be weird to be in a stadium only 17% full. I can tell you I can still cheer very loudly, but it just doesn't have the same effect when there's not very many.
It's been a little surreal pulling up to the stadium every day. This is the longest this place has been empty since it was open. It's still surreal to me every day. I mean, this place is not a place designed to be empty and quiet. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to getting back to some semblance of normal and getting some people back in here.
Well, we are pulling for you. All right, so let's go to John. John, and all of these speakers, I should do a webinar 1 hour with each of you. But what did we miss, and what do you want to hit on as final thoughts?
Well, very quickly, my teams are always at 10-15% capacity, so I feel at home going to these empty arenas. A few final thoughts. Part of my job is to look at the longer-term global policies that will affect our region and, to a certain degree, our country. I'm a policy junkie, but one of the things we all need to start planning for in the more macro sense is about probably 10 years ago, I gave a policy speech and saying how the manufacturing experiment in China is failing and is doomed to fail for a variety of reasons based on some of my experience working for a Fortune 50 company in an earlier life. Then I got involved in politics. And I still fundamentally believe that there are some major issues with China that have existed and are emerging now. Some of the tensions in the South China Sea, the Spratly Islands, for the first time, China is now talking about a forced reunification, not a peaceful reunification, but a forced reunification for Taiwan. You see what's going on this past weekend with the so-called national security initiatives in Hong Kong. All of these things are going to be leading toward what I still consider to be, again, this hemispheric or continental globalization, ergo why Mexico and Canada, and I would argue expanding free trade opportunities within our hemisphere is not only a smart economic move, but a smart strategic move to isolate right now what isn't no, I don't think there's any illusion that China is becoming a big adversary. So these are the macro issues. How do we take advantage of that as communities, as states, to attract foreign direct investment from really all over the world, but to take advantage of that rebirth, that regrowth. And again, I think there's going to be a very strong rebound, partly because of what's going on in Asia and particularly China. So keep an eye on that. I encourage everybody to look at those macro issues. They have a very deep and profound effect on all of our lives.
That's a great take on it. I wish we could spend more time discussing the details of that, because that's fascinating. It could be a nice boom, you're saying, right, for North America?
I believe so.
We
Absolutely.
could sure use one right now, in case you haven't looked at the unemployment numbers. It's not good. All right, last but not least, do you have any final thoughts or anything we missed that you wanted to talk about, Alvaro?
I guess we covered a lot of the issues on our industry happening right now. Just building up on what John kind of said, we think as well that a lot of opportunities are going to start coming into our way, especially at the border between Mexico and U.S. And we're going to keep our eyes open and open up for those companies and industries to kind of establish themselves in the operations in Ciudad Juarez and El Paso region and in the state of Chihuahua.
What kinds of opportunities? Can you elaborate just a little bit?
As you know, we have the biggest industries mainly on automobiles, aerospace, as well in technology, basically on TVs. We have the biggest companies that develop TVs here in our city, and we're trying to focus more into the high value added jobs where we can bring more established companies into our region that kind of structure into the supply chains of some of these industries, and participate as well as regional companies that can integrate into some of those supply chains for them to leave some of their value into our region.
Let me ask a follow-up question of everybody. What do you all think, as Texas, could it possibly diversify away from oil? With the new opportunities all of you have been talking about don't have anything to do with oil. Is this an opportunity?
Always.
Anybody?
Always an opportunity, no doubt. You look at the potential with pharma, or John's comments on China. You look at the onshoring of some of that biomedical manufacturing and things like that. I mean, it's always an opportunity, right? I mean, every time there's one of these, everybody takes a real hard look at everything, and there's additional efficiency in existing industries, and always an opportunity to put a great workforce to work in other things. In Houston, for example, I look forward to some explosive growth in life sciences. And by the way, thanks for having this discussion today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this has been eye-opening. John, do you have anything to add to that? I see you nodding.
Just want to reiterate, literally in one day, we had 3 companies in the biomedical field, mainly manufacturing, PPE manufacturers. 2 of the 3 are from China. The other one was from California, looking for new opportunities in our region. In one day, 3 companies looking at our region. So I want to echo what was just said. Very, very true about the biomedical field.
Are you all seeing too? The population of Texas has exploded and continuing to. Do you see that continuing? And I'll add my own little flavor. A lot of us in the Midwest that lean a little bit right are looking at moving to a state that's a little more business friendly.
Agree. In Juarez, we're seeing we've seen a lot of organic growth from some of the established maquiladoras as well. They're growing, doubling their operations, a lot of them. So we can find an industrial property isn't being developed that's not already leased. So I think basically on John's comments, we're seeing a lot of attraction into some of these companies moving down here to our region.
That's really fantastic. I have to do a little bit of plug for my company here. You all brought up 2 webinars that I have coming up. One was on the capital markets. We've got some national people from Chicago, New York, other cities are going to talk about on June 2nd what's going to go on with the national markets or capital markets and this PPP forgiveness. So if anybody listening right now got a PPP loan, we've actually got a representative from the SBA coming on this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And some attorneys, accountants, and people that really understand how to get that forgiveness thing, that mystery solved. And then June 9th, this is I'm a former tax attorney. So this thing on June 9th is pretty cool because the CARES Act reopened some things I used to do back when I was in law school. So there's a lot of interesting tax things and real estate going on right now. And then a national industrial deal with some CEOs of some of the biggest buyers of industrial. So good stuff coming up. We're kind of refocusing on webinars that would appeal nationwide. So just because you're in Texas and it doesn't say Texas in front of it, doesn't mean it doesn't apply to you. We have got some big names and hoping to get a lot of people online for that. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time. Oh, I got to go back to our YouTube channel. We do have a YouTube channel. So you were recorded today, gentlemen. If you want to send this video out, feel free. I'll get you the video link when we're all done here. Our Alan Davis in our office will. If you had to drop off early or if you know anybody else that wants to see it, please support that as well. Well, thank you. This was fantastic. I literally, I know I said it like 4 times. I want to do more of this. Gentlemen, let's stay in touch and maybe figure out another time to talk more of when some of these things become a reality over the coming months. So we're going to sign off. Say your final goodbyes and thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
See ya.